Hello, and welcome to Sharing Stories and Knowledge with Dr. MPQ. I am Dr. Maria Elizabeth Perez-Quetives and the host of this podcast. I haven't been able to record as many podcasts in the last month because I've been going through a lot of transitions. And so I thought, what is better yet to talk about transitions since I'm in the middle of a transition. So, to share with you, today's talk is going to just talk about my last experiences and the different transitions that I've been going through. But more with the topic of today is giving myself permission to do me. And what that means is as I have shared in previous podcasts, a mother of two, and my role as a mother has played a huge part in my life, especially with me going back to school and seeking my education. Never did I think I was going to be seeking a PhD and becoming a doctor, but I did. So a lot of the motivation that I have had in my life has been around my children. And so when I first went back to school, my daughter was actually starting kindergarten, and now she's 25 and my son's 30. And I'm actually a grandmother of a 4-year old granddaughter and soon to be second granddaughter. So I've gone through a lot of transitions in my time. And so one thing that I've been managing for the last, especially last couple of 3, 4 years, has been this transition of giving myself permission to do me. And so in my reflecting over these last years, one of my agendas has been, especially after me finishing my PhD program and especially experiencing COVID, going with the loss of my mother and my Theo Tino, I found myself in a place of like kind of feeling lost but exhausted. And so, like many of you, we're parents and children play a big part in our life until one day they're grown. And then I find myself asking questions of like, now what? So what I find myself in the middle is, and what I find myself to be in the middle is, how do I give myself permission to do me? How do I, before my children were my main motivators of why I did what I did. And now that they're grown, I kind of feel empty, right? And this term what a lot of people refer to as empty nesters, which means is that, now you're in home where you don't have children. So in my home now it's just me and my husband. And I was living at home close to my family. However, I've recently relocated to a different part of California, and now I find myself even more away from my family. And so now doing research on parenting students, you're a parent and you're trying to care and raise your family and your children, but also you're trying to seek an education. My research has found that regardless of male or female, age or race, ethnicity, a lot of parents, mothers, and fathers deal with guilt. And so, similar to my findings, I deal with a lot of guilt. I'm a person that has always put everyone first, including my family and extended family. And I felt like I kind of lost myself in the middle of all that. And I think after losing my mom and then my uncle back in 2022, I just kind of feel that, like, again, what the research says about loss, I feel myself processing, what does grieving mean? And, this process of pain and loss of a loved one. So these are like my current thoughts. And I thought it would be helpful to talk with you, my audience, on like some of the things that I'm dealing with and share with you. And I'm hoping that it would benefit you and kind of we could process together, right, on kind of some of the things that I feel many of us go through. And so a variety of things that I deal with. I do feel mother guilt, as I shared. I do have some family guilt. Guilt is very present in my being. However, for me to really seek my passions and to really learn about what it means to like put myself first, even that question when I was when I was at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. I was in the middle of my PhD program, and I found myself going through many changes in my body, mentally and physically. And I was working with a dietitian, and I remember her asking me, what are some of the things that I did, or what are her specifically asking questions about me. And I kept replying to her and answering her and talking to her about my husband, my daughter. And so she had said, I could tell that you really love your family, but every time I ask a question about you, you don't talk about yourself. So for I would say for the last probably 6, 7 years, I've been processing, going on this journey of like, what does it mean to really care for myself? And I think for me to have finally gotten there, I had to have lost myself. And what that looked like was, unfortunately, again, going through some grief and losing some loved ones, but then not really taking care of myself during my PhD program. And then COVID definitely has a part in there that definitely changed ways that I would navigate myself socially and ways of taking care of myself. And then on top of that, dealing with just different body challenges. And so I think, like many of us, I think when you feel like you're at your lowest, and there was a time where I was dealing with really a lot of anxiety, some depression. I never thought I would be saying that it was hard for me to like shower and get out of bed and just get motivated. But in working with a therapist, which I highly recommend many people to do that if you ever find yourself in need, um, is to I wanted to know why I was so challenged. I wanted to know why it was so hard for me to feel motivated. Why was I so tired? Why was I so sad? Why was I not motivated to take care of myself and everything, the simplest basic things. And this is one of my I guess signs of when I know I need more support or I need more help is when I feel the basic things like showering and feeding myself and going to the store, to the grocery store, just the simplest things that a lot of people aren't challenged by and doing daily. Like I found those things challenging. So I had to figure out ways, daily practices of how to motivate myself and try to really look within myself and process the feelings that I was feeling. So I find myself being really challenged by, me um, finding motivation. And I would ask myself, why is it I would help others or care for my children at a drop of a dime, but when it comes to myself, the effort to take care of myself is just so challenging. And so some of the things that I've been processing is what motivates me, right? And what helps me continue um adding the light to my life, but then the flame, right? That fire in me, like what makes that burn? And so these are some of the things that I've been asking myself, and now because I've had so much transitions, like my children being older, I'm done with grad school, trying to still continue to develop my career and what are my passions and my interests and where do I really want to focus, some of the questions about that is like these feelings of vulnerability, develop adult relationships with my children, solo with, I'm standing solo without this fight of mama. Like before, when I was seeking my education that I did, I would think of my children, and this is why I would do it. Children are grown, and I'm blessed in that way that they're both well and they could take care of themselves and they don't need me as much. But now, since I'm not continuing that role, that I'm every day taking care of them, where does that fight in me come from? Where is that motivation? If I'm not the fight of mama, right? That role of doing it for them, where does my fight come from? And so that's something that I've been processing and I don't know. I'm still I wish I could say, "Oh, this is my fight and this is why I do it." I would say that my passion and my interest in working in higher education does come from students and me wanting to help students, to motivate them, to teach them, to guide them, to like fulfill their goals and their dreams, and for them to work through their challenges and mentor them through like, whether they want to go to grad school or whether they're seeking funding or develop relationships with their professors. Like, I love sharing my story, and I feel that I've endured so much experience, and I've learned a lot about higher ed, especially grad school. And so now, with this new position that I have at the University of California, Riverside, I now get to mentor, but then run a program that would really help enhance underrepresented students in grad school. And so I really look forward to seeing what's going to come of that position. But in the meantime, I'm not going to put myself on pause with my transition of careers and becoming a grandmother and now a mother of adult children. Me and my husband now are 24 years married. All these roles that I have, all these different identities, the one focus where I'm at is how do I really concentrate on me, but then how do I give myself permission to do that? And so some of the questions that I find are really challenging, but I ask myself is, and they seem like really simple questions, but they're more challenging than I expected. And so some of the challenging questions that I ask myself that I'm searching for and seeking is like, what are my hobbies? What are some of the things that I like doing? I'm very open to, this is a tricky thing. I'm very open to learning new things. And if someone invites me to go somewhere, I'm always a little hesitant. But if I'm eager to learn something and I need to go do it by myself, then I feel myself, I'm kind of a little like, maybe I don't want to do that, and I don't know if I have feelings of fear or my vulnerability side of like doing it alone. And it's funny because when I think of these things, I used to do things by myself. I used to be very self oriented before I had children. I was by myself. I love being by myself. I used to go and do things. And it's just funny now that I had this other life identity of having children, family, putting them first. And now that I have this opportunity to focus on myself, I just find it like empty. I'm just like, okay, what do I like to do? Um, and so, yeah, so what are my hobbies? What do I enjoy? What makes me smile? What gives me pleasure? I love nature. I love coffee. I love the art of coffee. I've learned to brew my own coffee and make different lattes. I really enjoy the smell of coffee. So one of my goals one day that I know for sure is that I would love to take a course on coffee making. And I actually thought of getting a job as a barista just to learn the skill of it. But yeah, what is it I really like to enjoy? I love nature. One of the things that I ask myself is, okay, if I love nature, what is it about nature that I want to do? And one thing I do know is I love sitting outside, on a cool California day under a shaded tree, next to some kind of water, lake or water feature. Just the sound of water just makes it very peaceful for me. But beyond that, what are some things that I really enjoy? If I'm feeling lonely or I'm feeling like, hey, what are some hobbies? How can my hobbies and me enjoying something with other people, what does that look like for me? And these are some of the things that I'm processing for myself. What are some of the things that I love? What are some of the things that I like really motivate me in my inner self? These are things beyond just enjoy. What are things that I really want to like figure out how to do? What do friendships look like? I feel that I'm gonna have a conversation with a friend of mine, Serena, and we're gonna talk about friendships. And me and her has had an interesting journey in our friendship. But I find myself asking, what do friendships look like? At this age, I'm not willing to settle. People think, oh, I've been friends with this person for 20 years. And then that friendship changes, and then you feel you have to continue being friends with this person, even though it's not healthy for you. Oftentimes, I ask myself, okay, if I'm going to go spend time with friends or if I'm going to plan things with friends, am I enjoying myself? Am I enjoying the relationships that I have with individuals? And if I'm not, how can I be better as a friend? Right? How can I develop those friendships better? So that's something that I often ask myself. And then another thing is, on top of that, now at this time, is how do I grieve and process pain and loss? And people who have lost loved ones, or people who have read about grieving and loss, know that no, people don't grieve the same. Everyone has their process of how they grieve a lost one. And I think for me, losing two of the most important people in my life, my mother and my Tio Tino, who raised me and who invested in me and motivated me to be the human I am today, has been really challenging. Then to see my uncle, he was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and at 83 years old, for 83 years, this man has been independent. He was the head of his household. He was, even though he was living around his father, he was the father figure of his family. Never got married, never developed relationships for a lifetime, because he decided to dedicate his life to his family, but specifically for his younger brother who was struggling with mental health. So here's a man who was all about family and taking care. So when he got sick, it was really really hard for him to process that, what it meant. But it was really also, as his person who cared for him, it was really hard for me to see him go through that. I feel one of the saddest things, and I could have never predicted this, but one of the hardest things that I ever had to go through was seeing his life deteriorate. And that was hard for me. So how do I honor them? How do I um, allow myself to grieve, but also how do I allow myself to honor their stories, their teachings in my life? And so um, I need to also define and process my role, the now, my different roles, my different identities, and my duties and responsibilities, beyond the role I had before. And so now I often find myself, I know I'm very blessed and I know I'm very honored to have done so much in my time. And I often think that I should be happier than I am, but I often find myself struggling to again find that motivation and honor and that burning flame of how I do that. And as I said, my daughter's 25, and for the last 4 to 5 years, I've been processing this. How do I honor them and let them be the adults that they're going to be, and me be a supporter in their life? What does it mean to be a loving mother now at this age to my children, and how do I support them with their lives and their choices? But how do I honor myself now as the individual I am, that I have the opportunity to have had children, raise them, invest in them, and now they're doing their life, and I still have fire in me to work and build my career beyond school. And I was in school for like 16 years. I got 4 degrees back to back. And so even my identity beyond school is still new. Even though I finished my PhD in 2000, August of 2022, it's only been like 3 years. So it does take time for me to find myself. It has taken time, and to really understand like what I want to do and what makes me happy. I don't feel like I'm willing to settle. I feel like I've done so much for other people. And now that those people are taken care of and I did fulfill my roles and my duties, I really want to concentrate on myself and not feel guilty about it and not feel sad because I decided to take a job that's 6 hours away from my family. Love and miss them every day. But really, how do I work through that guilt of me feeling bad by leaving my hometown again and seeking a job and trying to concentrate on me, and then me and my husband trying to concentrate on ourselves, and for once really think about, okay, what does it really mean to like live for us every day. So my goal in talking about this, and again, I hope that people who are listening could relate to what I'm sharing in one way or another. And if you're not there yet, it's okay. Maybe one day, hey, I remember what Dr. MBQ was saying about her transition, about giving herself permission to do her, and how challenging she was. And again, I feel that transitions are hard, change are hard. You could be an 18-year-old, graduate high school and transitioning into the workforce. You could be an 18-year-old transition to college. You could be in your 20s and now you're a single person and now you're going to get married and transition to be parent. There's so many different transitions, and I just wanted to use this time to talk about the many transitions that I've done, but then where I am now and how I'm struggling, but how I'm trying to figure these things out through reflection, through reading, through my spiritual growth, and honoring myself, and doing the work that I love, and working in higher education, and mentoring students, towards their dreams and their goals. You know, I want to know how I can age well, right? How can my health be better? How can I be healthy? How could I be happy? How could I really smile and be present with my time? How could I accept new adventures and work through my fears and my vulnerability? And then how could I continue my life, right? This learning process of learning, because I feel like no matter what age you are, we're always learning, and the society that we live in is always changing. And so I feel that maybe one way, I thought my life would look a certain way and it doesn't. So how do I adjust and learn to the new ways of how the now is? And so that's kind of my process that I'm going through. I hope that has been helpful. I really enjoy sharing. I hope you have a good day, or good evening when you're hearing this podcast. And I look forward to sharing more stories in the future. All right. Bye bye.